1.1 This is not my name. Dying isn't like in the movies. It's not peaceful. It's not quick. It's cold seeping into your bones while your brain screams at nerves that won't respond. It's copper in your mouth and darkness at the edges of your vision. Should have just quit while you're ahead. I tried to speak, but blood bubbled past my lips instead. The warehouse lights dimmed, flickered. My last thought wasn't profound. Wasn't about revenge or regret. I just didn't want to die on this dirty warehouse floor. Then everything went black. And then, the warehouse lights snapped back into fluorescent clarity. Not concrete floor. Not blood and cordite. Classroom. Desk. Morning sunlight. Murano. The chalk hit the blackboard with a sharp crack. My head snapped up. The teacher glared at me from behind thick glasses. He was a cliché of middle-aged exhaustion, balding, with a rumpled brown suit that had seen better decades. Around me, 30-odd teenagers in identical uniforms stared. Some snickered. Others looked bored. Murano Yukio, the teacher repeated, his voice carrying the particular brand of irritation reserved for students who dared to exist in his presence. Since you're so fascinated by whatever's happening outside that window, perhaps you'd like to solve this equation for us? I blinked. The blackboard was covered in symbols that looked like Japanese but weren't quite right. Mathematical formulas mixed with what appeared to be scientific notation, but the context made no sense. Something about Quirk factor analysis and hereditary mutation coefficients. Quirk? The word sat strange in my mouth, foreign yet familiar. Like remembering a song you'd never heard before. Well. The teacher tapped his chalk against the board. We're waiting. I stood. The chair scraped against linoleum. My legs felt wrong, too long, too lean. I was taller than I remembered being. The uniform jacket hung loose, the fabric unfamiliar on my shoulders. The voice that came out wasn't mine. Higher pitched. Younger. Japanese accent thick as honey. I don't. Laughter rippled through the classroom. Not cruel exactly. Just the casual amusement of teenagers watching someone else get called out. Sit down, Murano. The teacher waved his chalk dismissively. See me after class. I dropped back into the chair. My hands were shaking. What the hell is happening to me? The rest of the period passed in a haze. I kept my head down, scribbling nonsense in a notebook that apparently belonged to me. The handwriting was neat, precise, nothing like my own scratchy scrawl. Every page was filled with notes about something called hero law and quirk ethics. Heroes. Quirks. The words bounced around my skull like pinballs, triggering fragments of memories that felt borrowed. A man in a garish costume flying overhead. News reports about something called Plus Ultra. A woman with pink skin and horns teaching a math class. None of this makes sense. The bell rang. Students shuffled out, chattering about weekend plans and homework assignments. I stayed frozen in my seat until the teacher cleared his throat. Murano. I approached his desk on unsteady legs. Up close, he looked tired. The kind of bone-deep exhaustion that came from years of dealing with teenagers who'd rather be anywhere else. You've been distracted lately, he said, not looking up from the papers he was grading. Your test scores are slipping. The entrance exams are in 2 months. Entrance exams? He finally looked at me. Behind his glasses, his eyes narrowed. UA University. Your dream school, remember? The one you've been obsessing over since middle school. Right, I said. UA. If you don't get your act together, you'll be lucky to get into a community college. He went back to his papers. Your sister works too hard for you to waste this opportunity. Sister. Images flashed through my mind. A woman with black hair streaked white, making breakfast in a tiny kitchen. Warm hands ruffling my hair. A voice calling me you in a tone that mixed affection with gentle exasperation. Kimine. I stumbled out of the classroom. The hallway was emptying as students headed home. I pressed my back against a locker, breathing hard. I died. I know I died. The warehouse, the blood, the cold. I dug through the unfamiliar pockets of my uniform jacket and found a student ID. The photo showed a teenager with black hair and violet eyes. My eyes, apparently, staring back at me with a serious expression. The name read Murano Yukio, Class 3B. There was an address on the back. The train ride home was a nightmare of sensory overload. The Tokyo subway system was familiar enough. I'd used it plenty in my previous life, but everything felt heightened. The crowds pressed closer. The announcements were too loud. My reflection in the window showed a stranger's face wearing my confusion. I got lost twice. The address led me through a maze of narrow streets lined with apartment buildings that all looked identical. By the time I found Sakuragawa Heights, the sun was setting and my legs ached. Building 3, Apartment B. I stood outside the door for a full minute, key in hand. What if I'm wrong? What if this isn't my life? But the key fit. The door opened. The apartment was tiny. Smaller than my old studio, if that was even possible. The Jenkin barely had room for 2 pairs of shoes. Beyond it, I could see a cramped living space dominated by a worn gray couch and a small television. Yuki. I looked up. She was sitting at a small table near the kitchen, textbooks spread around her like fallen leaves. Black hair with white streaks caught the overhead light, and when she turned toward me, I saw eyes the color of warm mahogany. She wasn't a head-turner, the kind that announces her presence. She was the quiet type of beautiful you don't notice until you're already in too deep. The dangerous kind. The kind that costs you more in the long run. And she was completely, devastatingly familiar. "You're late," she said, closing her textbook. Her voice carried a musical quality that made something in my chest tighten. "Everything okay? You look pale." I stood there, key still in my hand, staring at her. The memories were coming faster now, fragments of a life I'd never lived but somehow remembered. Birthday mornings with homemade pancakes. Study sessions at this same table. Her laughing at something I'd said, head thrown back, eyes crinkled at the corners. "Kimiko. Her name is Kimiko." My voice cracked. I got held up at school. She studied my face with those warm eyes. There was something perceptive in her gaze, like she could see right through whatever mask I was wearing. "Come here," she said softly. I approached the table on unsteady legs. She reached up and pressed the back of her hand against my forehead. "No fever," she murmured. "But you look like you've seen a ghost." "More like I am one." Her touch was warm. It grounded me in a way that made the borrowed memories feel less foreign. This was my sister. Somehow, impossibly, this person who I'd never met but had known my entire life was the most important thing in this strange new world. "Just admiring the view," I managed, gesturing vaguely at the kitchen. "You're looking domestic." She didn't look convinced, but she didn't push. Instead, she gestured to the papers spread across the table. I looked at the documents. Official letterheads, professional language, and in the corner of each one, a small box marked Quirk status with Quirkless written in Kimiko's neat handwriting. Quirkless. Her gaze lingered a moment too long on my face, a slight furrow appearing between her brows before she smoothed it away with a practiced smile. She knew. She wouldn't call me on it, not yet, but the question was hanging in the air between us. I should. I gestured vaguely toward the living room. "Homework." "Of course." She gathered her papers into a neat stack. "I'll start dinner in a bit. We've got rice and some leftover curry." I nodded and escaped to the couch. My school bag, apparently mine now, was filled with textbooks and assignments that might as well have been written in hieroglyphics. But I pulled out a notebook anyway and pretended to study while my mind raced. This is real. This is actually happening. I died in a warehouse in Tokyo and woken up in the body of a 17-year-old student in what appeared to be the same city but a completely different world. A world with heroes and quirks and entrance exams for something called UA University. A world where I had a sister who loved me. From the kitchen came the soft sounds of Kimiko preparing dinner. The rice cooker beeped. Dishes clinked against the counter. Normal, domestic sounds that should have been comforting but instead made my chest feel tight. She was humming something under her breath. A melody I didn't recognize but somehow knew all the words to. "I don't belong here." 1.2 His sister's keeper. The rice cooker's gentle hum filled the silence between us. I leaned back against the couch cushions, letting my shoulders drop into the practiced slouch that had served me well in my previous life. When people thought you were relaxed, they let their guard down. Basic psychology. But Kimiko wasn't buying it. She moved around the tiny kitchen like she owned every inch of it, opening cabinets and pulling out ingredients. She moved with the economy of a high-stakes dealer. Even with her back to me, the straight line of her spine and the set of her shoulders broadcast a quiet, crushing responsibility. "So," I said, injecting just enough casual interest into my voice. "How was your day?" She glanced over her shoulder. Those mahogany eyes studied my face for a beat too long. "Same as always. Classes in the morning, work at night." She turned back to the stove, lighting the burner under a small pot. "You know how it is." I didn't. The borrowed memories gave me fragments, images of her leaving early, coming home late, the sound of textbooks hitting the table at midnight. But the details felt fuzzy, like trying to remember a dream. "Right. Work." I kept my tone neutral. "How's that going?" "Fine." The word came out clipped. She stirred whatever was in the pot with more force than necessary. "Tips were decent last night. Should cover the electric bill." Electric bill. In my old life, I'd bet that much on a single card without blinking. Here, it was the line between light and dark. I watched her cook, cataloging details. The way she checked the rice cooker twice. How she measured out exact portions of curry powder. The small stack of coupons held to the refrigerator with a single magnet shaped like a cartoon cat. "What about your interviews?" I asked. "The hero agency ones." The rhythmic stir of her spoon against the pot faltered for a single beat. In the dark reflection of the window above the sink, I saw her smile tighten at the corners. They went well. Really well. She reached for plates from the cabinet, and I noticed the slight tremor in her hands. The hiring manager at Kamui Wood's agency seemed impressed. Said my portfolio was comprehensive. But nothing. She set the plates down harder than necessary. It's competitive, that's all. Lots of qualified candidates. Qualified candidates with quirks. I could see her at 17, bright-eyed and ambitious, talking about hero management like it was her calling. Then the slow realization that in a world of superpowers, being normal wasn't enough. You'll get one, I said, because it seemed like the right thing to say. She finally turned around. Her smile was soft but tired. Thanks, Yu. Yu. The nickname hit something deep in my chest. Not my chest, his chest. The original Yukio's. But the line between us was blurring in ways that made my head hurt. So, I gestured vaguely at the apartment. Tell me about this whole hero thing. I mean, really tell me. Like I'm an idiot who knows nothing. She blinked. What do you mean? Humor me. I leaned back, forcing a lazy grin that felt like a mask cracking on my face. Walk me through it. The whole hero racket. Sometimes you get so deep in the game you forget the basic rules, you know? Kimiko studied my face again. Then she turned off the burner and leaned against the counter, crossing her arms. You want the basics? Fine. She tilted her head, and the white streaks in her hair caught the kitchen light. 80% of the population has quirks. Superpowers, essentially. They started manifesting about 200 years ago, and society rebuilt itself around them. Rebuilt how? Heroes became a profession. Licensed, regulated, ranked. They fight villains, rescue civilians, and generally keep society from collapsing under the weight of people who can level city blocks. Her voice carried the practiced cadence of someone who'd explained this before. It's an entire industry now. Merchandise, sponsorships, television deals. Television deals. I almost laughed. In my world, the closest thing to heroes were cops and firefighters, and they sure as hell weren't signing endorsement contracts. And UA. The best hero school in the world. Maybe the best school, period. She pulled down 2 glasses and filled them with water. Their acceptance rate is lower than Harvard's used to be. Getting in basically guarantees you a spot in the top hero rankings. Which means money, fame, security. She handed me a glass. Everything we don't have. The bitterness in her voice was subtle, but I caught it. And you think I can get in? She was quiet for a long moment. Then she moved to the coffee table and picked up a thick packet of papers. This came in the mail today. I took the packet. The cover was emblazoned with a logo that looked like a stylized U, and it intertwined. University Application Heroics Program was printed below it in bold letters. Heroes. The word still sounded ridiculous. Like something out of a Saturday morning cartoon. The entrance exam is in 2 months, Kimiko said. Written portion and practical assessment. They test everything, academic knowledge, physical fitness, strategic thinking, and... She paused. Quirk application. I flipped through the pages. Most of it was standard application stuff, personal information, academic transcripts, letters of recommendation. But there were sections I'd never seen before. Quirk registration details. Combat experience summary. Rescue scenario preferences. What's my quirk supposed to be? I asked. Kimiko stared at me. What do you mean, supposed to be? You've had it since you were 4, Yuki. I know that, I said, forcing a grin. But indulge me. I'm trying to think about it from a marketing angle. How would you sell my quirk to a hero agency? What's the hook? She sat down beside me on the couch. The worn springs groaned in protest, and suddenly the space felt impossibly small. Her scent, something clean and floral, not the expensive perfumes I was used to, was an invasion. Every instinct screamed to put more distance between us, to regain control of the space, but the body I was in simply relaxed into her presence. Kinetic charge, she said. You can store energy in objects and release it on impact. The bigger the object, the more energy it can hold, but it takes longer to charge. 1.3 A dead man's hand. I nodded like this made perfect sense. And that's useful for hero work because you can turn anything into a weapon or a tool. Her voice warmed as she talked, the stress lines around her eyes softening. Remember when you were 12 and accidentally put a hole through the apartment wall? You'd charged a marble and forgot about it, then threw it at the wall during a baseball game. No, I didn't remember. Mom was so mad, Kimiko continued. But Dad just laughed and said you'd be the first hero who could level a building with pocket change. Mom. Dad. In the borrowed memories, I could see them. They were laughing about something, maybe that same marble incident. Then the images shifted, became darker. News reports. A villain attack. Flowers at a funeral. They'd be proud of you, Kimiko said softly. Getting into UA was always their dream for you. Their dream. My dreams had been simpler, a stack of cash big enough to make me a ghost, and a bed no one could kick me out of. I didn't care about their dreams. They were dead. I was the one stuck here. I looked at Kimiko, really looked at her. At the faint lines of exhaustion she couldn't hide with makeup, at the quiet determination in her posture. This wasn't about their dead parents' dream. This was about her. She was betting everything on this horse. Me. In my old life, you never let someone else's bet ruin you. But as she stood there, holding it all together with nothing but sheer will, I recognized the look of a gambler on their last chip. And I was her only play. It wasn't responsibility I felt. It was the cold, heavy weight of a debt I never agreed to take on. The problem was, I wasn't a hero. What if I don't get in? I asked. You will. The certainty in her voice was absolute. You're smart, you're strong, and your quirk is more versatile than most people realize. Plus. She grinned and nudged my shoulder. You've got me in your corner. And I don't lose. I don't lose. Besides, she continued, standing up to check on dinner, even if the worst happens, we'll figure something out. We always do. I looked down at the UA application again. The whole thing felt surreal. In my previous life, the idea of applying to become a professional do-gooder would have been laughable. Heroes were fiction. The real world was run by people who understood that everything had a price. But this wasn't my previous life. I flipped to a section labeled Personal Statement, and read the prompt, Describe why you want to become a professional hero and how you plan to use your abilities to help others. A playing card fluttered to the floor. The Ace of Spades. Where did this come from? I turned the card over in my hands. It felt normal enough, but as my fingers traced the spade symbol, something strange happened. The card began to glow. Not metaphorically. Not in my imagination. It actually started glowing with a brilliant purple light that made the air around it hum like a live wire. What the hell? A jolt shot up my arm. It was the feeling of a loaded spring, of a bowstring drawn taut to its breaking. I dropped it like it was on fire. The card hit the coffee table and lay there, looking perfectly normal again. No glow. No humming. Just a regular ace of spades. Yuki. Kimiko's voice came from the kitchen. Everything okay? I stared at the card. My hands were shaking. Yeah, I called back. Just dropped something. I charged it. I actually charged it. I picked up the card again, more carefully this time. Nothing happened. It felt like ordinary cardstock. But when I concentrated, when I focused on that strange sensation I'd felt before, the purple light began to build again. Slowly this time, like filling a glass with water. The energy was there, waiting for me to shape it. Kinetic charge. I'd always been good at cards. In my old life, I could shuffle, cut, and deal like a magician. I knew every trick in the book, false cuts, second deals, bottom stock. Cards were tools, and I was an expert at using them. But this was different. This was power. Real, honest-to-God superpowers. I let the charge dissipate and slipped the card into my pocket. My heart was hammering against my ribs, but for the first time since waking up in this strange new world, I felt something other than confusion. Dinner's ready, Kimiko announced. I stood up, the UA application still in my hands. The personal statement prompt stared back at me, waiting for an answer. Why do you want to become a professional hero? 20 minutes ago, I would have laughed at the question. Heroes were fairy tales. The real world was about survival, about taking what you could get and holding on to it. But looking at Kimiko as she set our plates on the small table, seeing the hope in her eyes when she talked about my future, feeling the power humming through that playing card. Heroes. I'd been thinking about it all wrong. It wasn't about saving the world. Who gives a damn about the world? It was about protecting your assets. And right now, Kimiko was the only thing in this whole screwed-up reality worth a damn. I folded the application and set it aside. Smells good. Family recipe, she said, settling into the chair across from me. Mom used to make it when Dad had a bad day at work. We ate in comfortable silence. The curry was simple but good, and the rice was perfectly cooked. Normal food in a normal apartment shared with someone who cared about me. It should have been peaceful. Instead, all I could think about was the card in my pocket and the purple light that had danced between my fingers. What else can I charge? How much energy can I store? What happens when I release it? The questions multiplied like rabbits. But underneath them all was a single burning thought. If I'm going to be stuck in this world, I might as well win at it. 1.4 Greetings, Broccoli. The apartment held that peculiar quiet that only existed in the hours before dawn. No traffic. No neighbors arguing through thin walls. Just the steady hum of the refrigerator and Kimiko's soft breathing from behind her closed door. I sat on the edge of the couch, already dressed in dark jeans and a plain black shirt. The playing card from last night rested between my fingers, still ordinary looking in the dim light filtering through our single window. But I could feel the potential humming beneath its surface, waiting. Saturday. No school. Prime time to figure out what the hell I can actually do with this thing. I stood, slipping the card into my back pocket. The plan was simple: head to the beach, find a secluded spot, and see how much damage I could cause without drawing attention. The original Yukio's memories painted Dagoba Beach as a dumping ground which would be perfect for a little experimental destruction. But as I moved toward the door, something stopped me. An impulse I didn't recognize, foreign and inexplicable. When was the last time I checked on someone while they slept? Never. Before I could talk myself out of it, I found myself standing outside Kimiko's bedroom door. My hand hesitated on the handle for a moment before I pushed it open just enough to peer inside. She was sprawled across her futon, one arm flung over her eyes, the other dangling off the edge. Her long black hair spilled across the pillow like spilled ink, the white streaks catching what little light crept through her curtains. She wore a simple white crop top that had ridden up slightly in her sleep, exposing a strip of toned stomach, and tiny gray shorts that showcased the incredible curves of her hips and thighs. Jesus Christ, this might be the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. Then the circuit shut off. No heat. No desire. Just a low hum of static where the predator should be. My sister. The thought was a firewall. I closed the door softly and headed for the front entrance, grabbing my worn track jacket from the chair where I'd left it. The morning air was crisp against my face as I stepped outside, and I breathed it in deeply. Time to see what this power can really do. The walk to Dagoba Beach gave me time to think. I pulled out the playing card and let a small charge build in it, watching the purple light dance beneath the surface. The energy felt responsive, almost eager. Like it wanted to be used. In my old life, cards were tools. Now they're weapons. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd spent years perfecting sleight of hand, learning to palm and deal with a kind of precision that could fool casino security. Now those same skills might actually save my life. When I finally reached the beach, I stopped short. What the hell? The memories had been wrong. Dagoba Beach wasn't the trash-covered wasteland I'd expected. Oh, there was still plenty of junk scattered around, but someone had been working to clean it up. Large sections of actual sand were visible, and neat piles of sorted debris dotted the shoreline. And there, near the water's edge, were the people responsible. A kid with wild green hair was struggling to drag what looked like a refrigerator across the sand. He was probably my age, but he was attacking the task like his life depended on it. Sweat poured down his face despite the cool morning air. Standing nearby was the strangest-looking man I'd ever seen. Tall and skeletal, with spiky blonde hair that defied gravity and sunken cheeks that made him look like he was recovering from a serious illness. He watched the kid's efforts like a hawk, occasionally calling out what sounded like encouragement. Ha! The kid's got desperation in his eyes, the kind that makes a man bet it all on a losing hand. And the scarecrow? He's hiding something. No one gets that skinny without a story. Whatever. I was about to turn around and find another training spot when the green-haired kid stumbled. The refrigerator slipped from his grip and crashed back onto the sand with a metallic clang that echoed across the beach. Damn it. The kid's voice cracked as he wiped his face with the back of his hand. Hey, Broccoli. The words left my mouth before I could stop them. Both the kid and the skeletal man turned to look at me, startled. The kid's eyes were huge and green, the color of fresh grass. They held a kind of desperate hope that I recognized from my own mirror back when I was young and stupid enough to believe in things like fair chances. I raised my hand in a lazy two-fingered salute. Keep it up. If you don't die from exhaustion, you might actually get stronger eventually. The kid's mouth fell open. The skeletal man's expression was unreadable behind the shadows cast by his wild hair. I turned and walked away before either of them could respond, already dismissing them from my thoughts. Junkyard it is, then. The scrapyard on the outskirts of town was everything the beach wasn't. Mountains of twisted metal rose like monuments to industrial failure. Rusted car frames were stacked 3 high, their windows long since shattered. Appliances in various states of decay formed a maze of potential targets and obstacles. The air smelled of rust and oil, tinged with the ozone scent that seemed to follow my charged objects. This is more like it. I picked my way through the debris until I found a relatively clear area near the center of the yard. Old tires were scattered around like black donuts, and a network of hanging steel beams created natural ricochet points. It was a playground designed for someone with my particular set of skills. I pulled out the playing card and let it charge fully, watching the purple light build until the air around it hummed like a live wire. Then I flicked it at a nearby hubcap. The explosion was beautiful. The card struck the metal surface and detonated in a shower of violet sparks. The hubcap flew backward, crashed into a stack of pipes, and sent them tumbling like oversized pickup sticks. Not bad. But I can do better. I spent the next hour pushing the limits of what I could charge and how much energy I could store. Playing cards were easy and they held a decent amount of power. Coins were even better. Ball bearings, which I found scattered around an old workbench, were perfect. Small enough to palm, dense enough to carry serious energy, and aerodynamic enough to maintain accuracy over distance. The old tricks found new purpose. A false shuffle wasn't for stacking a deck anymore, it was for priming multiple cards without a single wasted motion. The palm pass let me switch between live rounds and duds mid-throw. A bottom deal became a burst of rapid fire. In my old life, I'd been exceptional at what I did. I could read a mark's tells from across a crowded casino. I could stack a deck so smoothly that even other cheaters couldn't spot it. I could fight dirty enough to walk away from situations that should have killed me. Well, it did, but that's not important. Now I had superpowers on top of all that. What's the point of having an advantage if you don't use it? As the morning wore on, I started getting creative. I learned to charge objects in sequence, creating chain reactions that turned simple throws into elaborate displays of destruction. I practiced ricochets, using the natural angles of the junkyard to hit targets that should have been impossible to reach. And then I had an idea. I positioned myself 50 feet away from a discarded soda can balanced on top of a broken washing machine. Between me and the target was a maze of obstacles, a rusted car door hanging at an angle, a vertical stack of old tires, and a steel beam suspended from a crane that had probably been abandoned here years ago. I pulled a small ball bearing from my pocket and let the charge build slowly. The purple light crawled across its surface like liquid electricity. When it reached the saturation point, I drew my arm back and let it fly. The bearing struck the angled car door and ricocheted upward, its trajectory altered by exactly the angle I'd calculated. It clipped the edge of the tire stack, sending it spinning as it changed direction again. The third impact came against the hanging steel beam, which rang like a bell as the bearing bounced off and launched itself toward the final target. The soda can exploded in a shower of violet sparks and aluminum fragments. A slow, dangerous smirk spread across my face as I surveyed the destruction I'd caused. In my old life, I'd been limited by the constraints of a world without superpowers. I'd been forced to work within the narrow confines of what was humanly possible. But this world? This world had no such limitations. I pulled out another ball bearing and let it charge, watching the purple light dance between my fingers. The UA entrance exam was in 2 months. 2 months to refine my technique, to perfect my style, to become someone worthy of the spotlight. The bearing left my hand like a purple comet, striking a distant target. The explosion echoed across the junkyard, a promise of things to come. 1.5 Live Fire Exercise. The streetlights blurred together in an endless parade of identical yellow pools, each one mocking my complete inability to navigate this damn city even after a week. I'd been wandering for 40 minutes now, the junkyard training session long behind me, and I was no closer to finding my way home than when I'd started. Left at the convenience store, right at the shrine, straight until you hit the main road. Simple directions. A child could follow them. Yet here I was, standing at what had to be the 4th identical convenience store I'd passed, each one apparently existing in some parallel dimension where basic geography ceased to function. This is pathetic, I muttered, checking my phone for the dozenth time. The battery icon glowed an accusatory red. Of course. Because why would anything be easy? My quirk had sharpened in the past week. Ricochet shots were now second nature. I could map the geometry of a battlefield in a heartbeat. But none of that tactical precision helped with actual geography. My accuracy with a charged coin was useless if I couldn't even find the right damn street. I turned down what looked like a promising side street, hoping it would connect to something I recognized. The buildings here were older, more cramped together, with narrow alleys snaking between them like dark arteries. Neon signs buzzed overhead, advertising everything from ramen shops to questionable massage parlors. Great. I've wandered into the sketchy part of town. Kimiko's going to kill me if I'm not home soon. That's when I heard the scream. Every city has its dark corners where stupid people make stupid decisions. The smart play is to walk on by. There's no percentage in getting involved in someone else's bad beat. But my feet, the traitors, were already carrying me toward the sound. I pressed myself against the brick wall at the mouth of the alley and peered around the corner. The scene was depressingly familiar, even if the setting wasn't. A woman in a business suit with short brown hair and a briefcase clutched protectively against her chest was backed against a chain-link fence. Standing between her and the alley's exit was a walking mountain of muscle and bad decisions. The thug had to be 6.5 feet tall, with arms like tree trunks and a neck that seemed to have been replaced by additional shoulder. His muscles were swollen beyond human proportions, veins bulging under skin that looked ready to split. A classic strength enhancer, the kind of low-rent villain who thought bigger automatically meant better. "Just give me the briefcase, lady," he rumbled, his voice like gravel in a cement mixer. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be." The woman shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "Please, I can't. These are important documents for my company. I'll lose my job if—" "Your job?" The thug laughed, a sound like breaking concrete. "Lady, you're gonna lose a lot more than your job if you don't hand that thing over." He raised one massive fist, and I could see the woman's face crumple in terror. The same raw, helpless fear I'd seen on the faces of people who'd crossed the wrong men back in my old life. The expression of someone who knew they were about to get hurt and couldn't do anything to stop it. "Walk away," the voice of my past life whispered. "Not your fight. Not your problem. There's no payout here. Nothing but risk and pain and complications you don't need." I started to turn, to slip back into the main street and find my way home. Let the heroes handle it. That's what they were for, right? But then the familiar thrum started under my skin. The sensation of my quirk responding to my emotional state, energy building in my fingertips like electricity seeking ground. A loaded gun begging to be fired. And I realized something that made me pause. I want to use it. Not because I was some noble hero in training. Not because I had some burning desire to save the innocent. But because I'd spent the last week practicing on empty cans and scrap metal, and part of me was genuinely curious to see what would happen when I used my power on something that could fight back. The thug took a step closer to the woman, his enhanced muscles rippling under his shirt. "Last chance, lady. Hand it over, or I take it from what's left of you." I sighed, pushed myself off the wall, and strolled into the alley like I was walking into a casino bar. The woman's eyes widened when she saw me, hope and confusion warring across her features. The thug turned, his massive frame blocking most of the alley's width. "Hey kid," he growled. "This ain't your business. Walk away while you still can." I leaned against the brick wall, the picture of casual indifference, and pulled a 100-yen coin from my pocket. I let it catch the dim light from the street lamp, rolling it across my knuckles in a little display that had impressed more than one mark back in my gambling days. "You know," I said, my voice carrying that cool drawl I'd perfected over years of high-stakes poker games, "if you're going to threaten a lady, you could at least have a little more class about it." The thug blinked, clearly not expecting this response. "What? I mean, look at yourself." I gestured at his swollen form with the coin still dancing between my fingers. "You're what, 6'6"? 250? Enhanced strength quirk that probably puts you in the small building damage category. And you're using all that power to shake down some office worker for her briefcase." The woman pressed herself harder against the fence, smart enough to stay quiet but not smart enough to run while the thug's attention was on me. "It's just—" I shook my head, as if genuinely disappointed. "It's amateur hour. Where's the style? Where's the artistry? You might as well be mugging old ladies for their purse change." The thug's face darkened, his enhanced muscles swelling even larger as his anger spiked. "You got a death wish, kid?" "Not particularly." I let the coin rest on my fingertip, balancing it there while a subtle purple glow began to build beneath its surface. "But I do have standards. And right now, you're failing to meet them pretty spectacularly." He took a step toward me, his massive fists clenching. "I'm gonna enjoy breaking you, smart mouth." "See, that's exactly what I'm talking about." The charge in the coin was building steadily, invisible in the dim light but thrumming against my skin like a tuning fork. No creativity. No flair. Just, "I'm gonna break you." Do you have any idea how many times I've heard that exact line? 1.6. Who said anything about running? The answer was 17, but I didn't feel like sharing. The thug lunged forward, his enhanced speed impressive for someone his size but still telegraph obvious to anyone who'd survived as long as I had. I flicked the charged coin at his face. The coin struck his forehead and detonated in a shower of purple sparks. The explosion wasn't powerful enough to cause serious damage, but it was more than enough to send him staggering backward, clutching his head and cursing. What the hell? Kinetic charge, I explained helpfully, already pulling another coin from my pocket. I store energy in objects and release it on impact. Pretty neat trick, right? The woman's eyes were locked on me now, her terror replaced by something approaching awe. The thug shook his head, trying to clear it, his enhanced muscles rippling as he prepared for another charge. You think that little firecracker is gonna stop me? He snarled. I'll crush you like a bug. Maybe, I admitted, letting the second coin charge while I spoke. You gotta catch me first, dumbass. He came at me again, this time leading with a haymaker that could have punched through a car door. I sidestepped it easily, the coin leaving my hand in a perfect arc that struck the brick wall beside his head. The explosion sent chips of mortar and dust raining down, and I used his moment of confusion to put some distance between us. The lady's briefcase, I said, my tone conversational despite the adrenaline singing in my veins. What's in it that's worth risking a felony assault charge? None of your damn business. He spun toward me, faster this time, learning from his mistakes. Well, at least he's not completely stupid. I charged a third coin and sent it ricocheting off the fire escape above his head. It struck a loose bolt, which came free and clattered to the ground behind him. He flinched, spinning to track the sound, and I used the distraction to move again. See, this is what I mean about class, I continued, circling him slowly. A real professional would have done his homework. Found out what the briefcase contained before making his move. Maybe even brought backup. The woman was edging toward the alley's mouth now, smart enough to use our confrontation as cover for her escape. Good. One less variable to worry about. Instead, you're just throwing around enhanced punches and hoping something sticks. I shook my head sadly. It's disappointing, really. His next charge was more controlled, more focused. He'd figured out that I was faster than him, so instead of trying to catch me, he was trying to corner me. Drive me back against the dead end where the woman had been trapped. Not a terrible strategy, actually. If he'd been fighting anyone else, it might have worked. But I'd spent years reading people's intentions, spotting their tells before they even knew they had them. And this guy was broadcasting his moves like a neon sign. I charged a fourth coin, but instead of throwing it immediately, I palmed it and pulled out a fifth. Tell you what, I said, backing toward the fence as if his plan was working. I'm feeling generous tonight. Walk away now, and we'll call this a learning experience. Stay, and I'll have to get creative. He grinned, showing teeth that had seen better days. Trapped now, ain't you, kid? Nowhere left to run. Who the fuck said anything about running? I threw the uncharged coin directly at his face. But while his attention was on the decoy, I flicked the charged coin at the fire escape support bracket. The explosion brought down a section of metal stairs that crashed between us, buying me the space I needed to vault over the debris and land behind him. He spun around, his face red. Stop running and fight me. I am fighting you. I pulled out another coin, letting the purple glow build visibly this time. You're just losing. The woman had reached the alley's mouth now, and I could hear her heels clicking on pavement as she ran toward the main street. Mission accomplished, as far as the rescue was concerned. Now it was just a matter of how much I wanted to humiliate this guy before walking away. The answer, it turned out, was quite a bit. He came at me one more time, desperation making him sloppy. I charged the coin to maximum capacity and sent it skipping across the alley floor like a stone across water. It ricocheted off the opposite wall, then the fence, then a trash can, building speed and changing direction with each impact before finally striking his ankle. The explosion sent him toppling forward, his enhanced bulk working against him as he crashed into a pile of garbage bags with all the grace of a falling piano. I walked over to where he lay groaning in the refuse and crouched down beside him, my voice dropping to the kind of quiet tone that had made grown men nervous back in my casino days. Here's some free advice, I said. Next time you want to shake someone down, pick a target who can't turn you into street pizza. Because if I see you bothering innocent people again, I won't be nearly as gentle. He tried to push himself up, but his coordination was shot from the repeated concussions. This ain't over. Yes, it is. I stood, brushing off my hands. And if you're smart, which admittedly seems unlikely. You'll make sure it stays that way. I left him there in the garbage and walked back toward the main street, where the woman was standing under a street lamp, still clutching her briefcase but no longer looking terrified. "Thank you," she said as I approached. "I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't." "Don't mention it." I waved off her gratitude, already thinking about how to get home from here. Just doing my civic duty. She fumbled in her purse and pulled out what looked like a business card. "If there's ever anything I can do to repay you." "Really, it's fine." I pocketed the card without looking at it. "Just be more careful walking alone at night, okay? Not everyone who shows up in dark alleys is going to be friendly." 1.7, a stage with better lighting. I was about to leave when darkness swallowed the alley. Not the natural kind of shadow you'd expect from clouds passing over streetlights. This was something else entirely. Holy shit. A woman the size of a skyscraper peered down at us, her blonde hair cascading like a waterfall around a face that belonged on magazine covers. Even at that scale, every detail was perfect. The curve of her lips, the intelligence in her purple eyes, the way her costume hugged curves that could probably be seen from orbit. MT lady. She shrank down to normal size, though normal was relative when you were built like a supermodel who moonlighted as a bodybuilder. Her landing barely disturbed the dust at our feet, which was probably more impressive than the size-changing trick itself. Police officers filed in behind her, their presence turning my little vigilante adventure into something official and potentially problematic. "You have any idea how much trouble you're in, kid?" Her voice carried the kind of authority that made grown men confess to crimes they hadn't committed. Illegal Quirk usage in a public space, engaging in vigilante activity without a license. She stopped mid-sentence as she stepped closer, the dim alley lights catching my face properly for the first time. "Well now." Her tone shifted like a gear change in an expensive car. "What do we have here?" She leaned in close enough that I could smell her perfume. "You know, it's a shame I have to lecture someone so promising." The woman I'd saved stepped forward. "Officer, hero ma'am, he saved me. That man was going to rob me, maybe worse, and this young man stopped him. He's a hero." MT lady listened to the passionate defense, but her eyes never left mine. When the woman finished, she sighed dramatically, one hand resting on her hip. "Fine. You got lucky this time." She tilted her head, studying me like I was a puzzle she wanted to solve. "And you're what, a college student?" 17, I confirmed, about to graduate. Something flickered across her face. Disappointment, maybe. It was gone before I could read it properly, replaced by a smile that was equal parts professional and predatory. She reached into what I was now realizing was a very strategically designed costume and produced a business card. "Well, if you get into a hero school this year." She pressed the card into my hand, her fingers lingering against mine just long enough to send a message. "Let's just say I'll be keeping an eye out for you. I could always use an intern with your talents." The card was warm from being pressed against her skin. I glanced down at it. Premium stock, embossed lettering, with her hero name and a phone number written in elegant script across the bottom. "Call me," she said. A news van screeched to a halt at the mouth of the alley, tires smoking against asphalt. A reporter and cameraman spilled out like they'd been shot from a cannon, drawn by the combination of police lights and MT lady's distinctive silhouette. MT lady. What happened here? Was there villain activity in the area? Before I could process what was happening, her arm was around my shoulders, pulling me against her side. "Just a minor incident, all handled," she declared, her voice projecting to the back of whatever invisible audience she was performing for. She gestured to me like I was a prize she'd just won at a carnival. My new protege here was a huge help. A real natural. Showed some amazing initiative. Her hand squeezed my shoulder. I understood the play immediately. This was theater, and she was offering me a starring role instead of a walk-on part as stupid kid who gets arrested. All I had to do was play along. I looked directly into the camera and let my most charming smile spread across my face. "Just doing my civic duty," I said, my voice carrying just enough humility to seem genuine while still projecting confidence. Though I have to say, learning from MT Lady was an honor. She really knows how to take charge of a situation. The reporter ate it up, scribbling notes while the cameraman adjusted his angle to get both of us in frame. "This young man has real potential," she continued. "With the right guidance and training, I think we'll be hearing his name in the hero rankings someday soon." I looked down at the business card in my hand, then back at MT Lady as she fielded questions from the reporter. 2 cards in one day, the woman I'd saved, and now this. The vertigo hit me again, But this time it felt different. Not like sickness or displacement, but like clarity. Like two puzzle pieces finally clicking into place. The dead gigolo and the student weren't separate people fighting for control of the same body. They were both me. The man who could read a room and play the angles, and the kid with a superpower that could turn pocket change into artillery. The survivor who'd clawed his way up from nothing, and the brother who'd do anything to keep his sister safe. I wasn't choosing between two lives anymore. I was standing in the middle of the biggest casino in the world, and I'd just been invited to the high rollers table. "So what's your name, young man?" the reporter asked, shoving a microphone toward my face. I glanced at MT Lady, who nodded encouragingly. "Yukio Murano," I said, and for the first time since waking up in that classroom, the name felt like it belonged to me. Future UA student, if everything goes according to plan. "And what's your quirk?" the reporter pressed, clearly sensing a story. "Kinetic charge," I replied, pulling a coin from my pocket and letting just enough purple energy dance across its surface to catch the camera's attention. I store energy in objects and release it on impact. The reporter asked a few more questions, but I was barely listening. MT Lady wanted something from me that much was obvious. The question was what, and how I could leverage that want into something that benefited me. She was beautiful, powerful, and connected. She had the kind of influence that could open doors or slam them shut, depending on her mood. And right now, her mood seemed very favorable toward one Yukio Murano. When the reporter finally packed up and left, MT Lady turned to face me properly. The police had taken the thug away in Quirk suppressing cuffs, and the woman I'd saved had given her statement and disappeared into the night. We were alone in the alley, just me and a pro-hero who was looking at me like I was dessert. "So," she said, her voice dropping back to that intimate register she'd used before the cameras arrived. "UA, huh? That's ambitious." "I don't do anything halfway," I replied, pocketing the coin but keeping her business card visible. "If I'm going to be a hero, I want to be the best." "Good attitude." She stepped closer, close enough that I had to tilt my head back slightly to maintain eye contact. The hero world can be challenging for newcomers. It's not just about having a strong quirk. You need to understand the game, the politics, the media. "And you're offering to teach me?" Her smile was answer enough. "Call me after you get your acceptance letter. We'll discuss opportunities." She turned to leave, then paused and looked back over her shoulder. "Oh, and Yukio? Next time you want to play hero, maybe don't do it in an alley where the security cameras can't see you. Bad for the footage quality." She walked away, her hips swaying. I tucked MT Lady's card into my jacket, letting it settle next to the first one I'd earned tonight. 2 contacts. 2 assets. The alley was empty now except for me and officers dragging Mr. Steroids away to jail. I started walking toward the main street, my steps confident despite having no idea which direction would actually get me home. It didn't matter. I'd figure it out, the same way I figured out everything else. And if I got lost along the way, well, that just meant more opportunities to play the hero. 1.8 My brother, the stranger. Kimiko's mahogany eyes locked onto the television screen, her breath catching in her throat as the news anchor's voice filled their cramped apartment. Amateur footage captured by a bystander shows the young man working alongside MT Lady to apprehend the criminal. The unidentified individual appears to be using some form of energy-based quirk. The remote slipped from her trembling fingers, clattering onto the coffee table scattered with her textbooks and job applications. The white-haired figure on screen moved like liquid shadow, coins spinning through the air before erupting in purple light. Each explosion made her flinch, not from the sound but from recognition. "That's him. That's you." Her little brother had saved someone. Had used his quirk not for training or showing off, but to protect a stranger in danger. But then the footage switched to an older clip, MT Lady during a villain attack 3 years ago. The same kind of attack. The smile vanished from her face. The air in the cramped apartment grew thin, the cheap floral freshener suddenly cloying. Her stomach clenched into a cold, sharp knot. I should be happy. This is what we've been working toward. This is his dream. So why did she feel like she was drowning? The apartment door flew open, the wood shuddering in its cheap frame. Yukio strode in, bringing the cool night air with him. His face was flushed, his violet eyes blazing with a triumph that seemed too big for their small living room. "Kimine, you're not going to believe what just..." He stopped mid-sentence, his expression shifting from elation to confusion as he took in her face. Those sharp eyes of his, the ones that had always been too knowing for his age, swept over her tear-stained cheeks and trembling hands. "Kimmy? What's wrong?" The simple question shattered whatever control she'd been clinging to. A sob escaped her throat, surprising them both. All the emotions she'd been trying to sort through, the pride, the terror, the memories of their parents' funeral, the image of him facing down criminals in dark alleys, tangled together into something too big for words. She launched herself forward, burying her face against his chest as the tears came freely. Her fingers twisted in the fabric of his shirt, holding on like he might disappear if she let go.
For a heartbeat, he stood frozen.
Then his arms came around her, pulling her close with a strength and certainty that made her breath hitch for an entirely different reason. This wasn't the familiar, gangly embrace of her little brother. The hug felt solid, protective, like being wrapped in a shield rather than seeking comfort from someone she needed to protect. His heartbeat thrummed steady and calm against her ear, the rhythm slowly anchoring her spinning thoughts. When had this happened? When had he grown into this confident stranger wearing her brother's face? The past 2 weeks, he'd seemed different somehow. More focused, more sure of himself. She'd attributed it to pre-exam nerves, but this? Hey, he murmured, his voice a low rumble that vibrated through his chest.
I'm here. I'm safe.
I saw the news, she whispered against his shirt. I saw, and all I could think about was, her voice cracked. What if I lost you too? His arms tightened around her.
You won't.
I promise you won't.
You can't promise that.
Not in this line of work. Not when you're throwing yourself at criminals in back alleys like some kind of hero? His tone carried a gentle tease, but underneath it lay something harder.
More resolved.
Kimmy, look at me. She did, her hands still fisted in his shirt. The violet depths held none of the reckless bravado she'd expected. Instead, she saw a cold, unwavering purpose. This, he said, is why I have to do this. So we're never weak again. So you're never scared again. He reached up, brushing a tear from her cheek. So you never have to work 3 jobs while some agency tells you you're not good enough. You've got it all figured out, don't you? She whispered, searching his face for any trace of the uncertain boy who used to crawl into her bed during thunderstorms. I've got the important parts figured out. His lips quirked into that familiar smirk, but it carried new weight now. The rest is just details. The trembling in her hands began to subside. The cold knot in her stomach loosened, replaced by something warmer.
Safer.
She leaned back in his arms, wiping her eyes but not stepping away from the circle of his embrace. A watery smile tugged at her lips as her usual personality began to resurface, like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. Okay, she said, her voice still thick but steadier now. Okay, hero. She tilted her head, studying his face with renewed interest. The confident set of his jaw, the way his hair caught the lamplight, the easy way he held himself like he owned whatever space he occupied. When had her gangly little brother become so? So, she said, letting a teasing note creep into her voice. About your new partner, MT Lady. His smirk widened into something positively wicked. Partner might be overstating it.
Hum.
Kimiko's smile turned into a real grin, mischief sparkling in her mahogany eyes. She seemed very hands-on in that footage. Very touchy. You could say that. And very beautiful. Also true. She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Tell me the truth, Yu. Is her ass really as great as it looks on TV? Yukio threw his head back and laughed, a deep, genuine sound that filled their tiny apartment and chased away the last shadows clinging to the corners. The laugh was different too, richer and more confident than the chuckle she remembered from before. You're terrible, he said, still grinning. I'm curious. She swatted his chest playfully. My little brother just got personally recruited by one of the most gorgeous heroes in Japan. I think I'm entitled to some details. She gave me her business card. Of course she did. Kimiko rolled her eyes. Probably pressed it right into your palm with some comment about your potential, am I right? Something like that. She studied his expression, noting the way his eyes danced with amusement and something else. Something that looked suspiciously like calculation. Her brother had always been clever, but this was different. This was the look of someone who saw opportunities where others saw complications. You're planning something, she said, not quite a question. I'm always planning something. This is different. She poked his chest with one finger. This is your I'm about to do something that will either be brilliant or get me killed face. Have a little faith in your hero, brother. He caught her hand, pressing it flat against his chest where she could feel the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. I told you, I've got the important parts figured out. Looking at him now, really looking, she could see it wasn't just his body that had changed. There was something in his eyes, something sharp and hungry and utterly fearless. The boy she'd been protecting was gone, replaced by a man who looked like he could protect the world if he set his mind to it.
Her partner.
She settled more comfortably against him, the solid beat of his heart under her ear a comforting, terrifying promise. A door closed on old fears, and she found herself leaning into the new ones. "All right, hero," she murmured, tilting her head back to meet his gaze. "Let's get to work." 1.9, then be the 1%.
2 months.
2 months of hell disguised as preparation, and I was starting to think Kimiko enjoyed watching me suffer. "Again," she called from across the park, clipboard pressed against her chest, stopwatch gleaming in the pre-dawn light. "Your form's sloppy on the turns." I bent over, hands on my knees, sweat dripping onto the gravel track. The public park was empty except for us and a few dedicated joggers who gave us a wide berth.
Smart people.
They could probably sense the aura of barely contained violence radiating from my sister-turned-drill sergeant. "My form," I panted, "is fine." "Your form is adequate. Adequate doesn't get you into UA." I straightened, shooting her the middle finger. Kimiko just smiled that sweet, merciless smile and clicked her stopwatch.
Sprint intervals. Go.
The woman was a sadist. A beautiful, brilliant sadist who'd somehow convinced me that voluntary torture at 5 in the morning was character building. But as I launched into another sprint, feeling my muscles burn and my lungs scream, I had to admit something I'd never tell her out loud.
She was right.
2 months ago, I'd been a decent fighter with a flashy quirk and enough arrogance to fill Tokyo Bay.
Now?
The scrawny teenager's body I'd inherited had transformed into something lean and dangerous. Not bulky. I'd never be a powerhouse like some of these hero types, but fast.
Precise. Deadly.
"Time," Kimiko called, and I collapsed onto the grass, chest heaving. She jogged over, her own breathing barely elevated despite keeping pace with me for the past hour. Sometimes I forgot she'd been doing this longer than I had, working multiple jobs while maintaining her own fitness regimen. The woman was a machine wrapped in curves and determination. "Better," she said, offering me a water bottle. "Your acceleration on the third interval was almost respectable." "Almost respectable," I repeated, taking a long drink. "Please praise me more. I'm exactly as kind as you need me to be." She settled beside me on the grass, pulling out her phone to log my times. Junkyard next.
I groaned.
The junkyard was where the real magic happened, where I'd learned to turn my quirk from a party trick into something that could level buildings. But it was also where Kimiko pushed me hardest, where she'd stand just outside the blast radius and critique my technique while I tried not to accidentally vaporize myself. "Can't we skip straight to the flashcards today?"
Nice try.
She stood, extending her hand to pull me up. "The exam is in 12 hours. If you're not ready now, another day of cramming won't save you." The junkyard sprawled before us like a metallic graveyard, towers of rusted cars and broken appliances. 2 months ago, I'd come here to throw charged coins at tin cans. Now I saw something else entirely. A symphony waiting to be conducted. I started simple, a charged ball bearing ricocheting off 3 car hoods before detonating against a refrigerator door. The explosion sent shrapnel flying in a controlled pattern, each piece striking predetermined targets. "Show off," Kimiko muttered, but I caught the pride in her voice. I wasn't showing off. I was thinking 3 moves ahead, the way I used to read poker tells and calculate odds. Except now the stakes were measured in twisted metal and purple fire instead of cash and pride.
Efficiency rating?
I called, already knowing the answer from her expression. 87%. She made a note on her clipboard. 87%. 2 months ago, I'd been lucky to hit 60. But Kimiko's standards were as relentless as her training methods.
Good enough wasn't good enough.
Perfect was the starting point.
"Again," she said, and I obeyed.
By the time we stumbled back to the apartment, I could barely feel my arms. The shower was a religious experience, hot water washing away 2 months of accumulated aches. When I emerged, wrapped in a towel, I found Kimiko waiting with her stack of flashcards and that look that meant my suffering was far from over. "Hero law," she announced, settling onto the couch and patting the cushion beside her. I collapsed next to her, still damp and exhausted.
She held up the first card.
Quirk usage regulations in public spaces. Licensed heroes and those under direct supervision of licensed heroes may use quirks in public for the purposes of villain apprehension, disaster relief, or authorized training exercises. Unlicensed quirk usage is subject to fines up to PR response to civilian casualties during villain encounters. Express immediate concern for the injured, emphasize the priority of saving lives, deflect specific questions to the investigation team, and schedule a follow-up statement once all facts are available. Weakness of typical strength enhancement quirks. Overconfidence, tunnel vision, and poor strategic thinking. They rely on brute force and forget that the strongest man in the room is still just a man with weak points. She smiled, the first genuine one I'd seen all day. Someone's been paying attention. Someone's had a very thorough teacher. The flashcards continued for another hour, covering everything from villain psychology to media management to the subtle art of merchandising deals. Kimiko's mind was a steel trap wrapped in silk, cataloging every detail that might give me an edge. She didn't just want me to pass the exam, she wanted me to dominate it. By the time we finished, the sun had set and my brain felt like overcooked rice. I slumped against the couch cushions, watching Kimiko organize her notes with the same methodical precision she applied to everything else. The bathroom was thick with chemical fumes and the weight of ritual. I sat on the rickety stool, shirtless, while Kimiko worked her magic with bleach and developer. My black roots had grown out over the past 2 months, a visible reminder of how long I'd been grinding toward this moment. "Hold still," she murmured, her fingers gentle but sure as she sectioned my hair. "Unless you want to go to UA looking like a zebra." The process was meditative in its own way. I could feel her breath on my neck as she worked, could smell her shampoo mixing with a harsh chemical scent. These quiet moments between us had become precious over the past 2 months, islands of calm in the storm of preparation. "Nervous?" she asked, applying bleach to another section. "Should I be?" "Most people would be." She paused, meeting my eyes in the mirror. "Then again, most people aren't you." "The acceptance rate is less than 1%, I said, testing the words. "I know. Thousands of applicants. Some of them with quirks that could level city blocks." "I know that too. What if I'm not enough?" Kimiko's hands stilled for a moment, then resumed their work. "Then you make yourself enough," she said simply. An hour later, I was back to being the high roller. I wasn't just playing a character anymore. The confidence, the precision, the cold calculation, it was all real now. Earned through sweat and pain and Kimiko's relentless faith in my potential. We ended up on the couch, a documentary about Endeavor's early career playing on the TV. Neither of us was really watching. Tomorrow loomed like a mountain, and the closer it got, the more I could feel the weight of everything riding on it. Kimiko shifted beside me, her body warm against mine as she settled more comfortably. Her head found its way to my chest, her hair tickling my chin. The weight of her was grounding, familiar. "Safe. A little quiet, aren't we?" she murmured, tilting her head to look at me. Her mahogany eyes held that teasing glint I knew so well. "Getting nervous, you?" I grunted. She shifted again, propping herself up on her elbow so she was looking down at me. Her thumb traced my jawline, the touch featherlight but somehow more intimate than anything I'd experienced in either of my lives. And here I was thinking my little brother was finally becoming such a big, strong man. A frustrated sigh escaped me, and I finally met her eyes. "The odds are insane," I admitted. "Less than 1%. Even with everything we've done, all the training, all the preparation." She didn't offer empty platitudes or false reassurance. Instead, she leaned down, pressing her forehead against mine. The playful teasing was gone, replaced by something fierce and unwavering. "Then be better than 1%, she whispered, her breath warm against my skin. "Go show them what a Murano is worth." 1.10 30 seconds to 0 hour. The morning sunlight cut through our apartment's grimy windows, illuminating dust motes that danced like tiny stars. I stood before the bathroom mirror, adjusting my dark peacoat for the 3rd time. The black turtleneck underneath hugged my frame just right, and the slim-fit jeans made my legs look longer than they actually were. Sharp boots completed the ensemble. Perfect. The high roller was ready for his debut. You breakfast." Kimiko's voice carried from the kitchen, accompanied by the familiar sizzle of eggs hitting hot oil. I emerged from the bathroom to find her bustling around our cramped kitchenette, hair pulled back in a messy bun, wearing an oversized sweater. She glanced up as I entered, and her face immediately shifted into what I'd come to recognize as overprotective sister mode. "Oh no," she said, abandoning the pan to march over to me. "You are not wearing that. What's wrong with this?" "Nothing's wrong with it. That's the problem." Her hands smoothed the lapels of my coat, fingers working to straighten invisible wrinkles. "You look like you're going to a fashion shoot, not an entrance exam. Maybe I want to look good while I demolish the competition." She snorted, but her hands continued their fussing, adjusting my collar and brushing lint from my shoulders. The touch was warm, familiar, grounding in a way that made my chest tight. "Got your ID?" she asked, patting down my pockets like I was 5 years old.
Yes. Exam pass. Yes. Your brain?
Because I'm starting to have doubts about that last one. I caught her hands, stilling their nervous energy.
Kimine, relax.
I'm leaving 30 minutes early.
I'll be fine.
She looked up at me, mahogany eyes searching my face for cracks in my confidence. Finding none, she sighed and reached into her pocket, producing a protein bar wrapped in bright packaging.
Take this anyway. And don't get lost.
I swear, if you're late because you took a wrong turn at the station, I'm walking you there myself next time. I pocketed the bar and ruffled her hair, earning a swat to my arm.
Trust me.
What could go wrong? 25 minutes later, I burst through the train station entrance like a man possessed, my careful composure shattered into 1,000 pieces. Sweat beaded on my forehead despite the morning chill, and my perfectly styled hair was probably a disaster. The digital display board glowed mockingly above the platform. Next train to UA District, departing in 30 seconds.
30 seconds.
I sprinted down the platform, my boots echoing against concrete as early morning commuters stepped aside. The train sat there like a metal beast, doors still open but already hissing their warning. A conductor raised his whistle.
Wait.
I shouted, diving through the nearest door just as it began to slide shut. The hydraulics sealed behind me with a definitive thunk, and the train lurched forward. I stood there, chest heaving, surrounded by a sea of bodies packed into the morning rush. My cool facade had cracked completely. I was just another panicked teenager trying not to be late for the most important day of his life. The train swayed as it picked up speed, and I reached out blindly for something to steady myself. My hand found purchase on what felt like a thick winter coat, soft fabric over a surprisingly firm shoulder. I squeezed gently, using it as an anchor while I caught my breath. Eep. The sound was high-pitched, cute, and came from directly beneath my hand. I turned my head, a lazy apology already forming on my lips, and my brain performed an emergency shutdown.
There was no one there.
Or rather, there were clothes there. Floating in mid-air like a department store mannequin had achieved sentience and decided to take public transit. A puffy brown winter coat hovered at shoulder height, filled out by an invisible form. Beneath it, I could make out the outline of a school uniform blouse and a black pleated skirt that moved with the train's motion. Cute leg warmers disappeared into platform shoes that somehow managed to look both fashionable and practical. My hand was resting squarely on the shoulder of a floating coat.
Holy shit. She's invisible.
How does it work? If she eats, can I see the food? No, that's stupid. Light must pass through her entirely. So she's basically transparent. Which means if you were to...
Excuse me?
The voice was bright and bubbly, cutting through my inappropriate thought process like a knife through butter. It seemed to come from the general vicinity of the floating coat's collar. My eyes are up here, I think. Also, you can totally move your hand now. I blinked, realizing I was still gripping her shoulder like a lifeline. Slowly, I pulled my hand back, but instead of stepping away, I found myself leaning slightly closer. The analytical part of my mind was fascinated. Here was a quirk unlike anything I'd encountered. Sorry, I said, though my tone probably didn't sound particularly apologetic.
Didn't see you there. A beat of silence.
Then, unexpectedly, the floating coat shook with what I could only assume was laughter. Oh my God, did you just? That's literally the worst invisible person joke ever.
I love it.
The voice was infectious, full of genuine mirth that made my own lips twitch upward. I aim to please, I said, settling into my usual lazy drawl. Though I have to admit, you've got me at a disadvantage here. I can't see if you're rolling your eyes at me.
Trust me, I totally am.
But also, this is like super exciting. Are you taking the UA exam too? Please tell me you are because I've been on this train for 20 minutes and everyone else looks so serious and scary. The train swayed around a curve, and I had to grab the overhead rail to keep from stumbling into her invisible form.
Guilty as charged, I said.
Though I'm starting to think I might be underdressed for the occasion.